What nice weather we got here, eh? How are things in Warsaw? You know, at least you'll appreciate the indoors.
You are receiving the news and you don't have the time to think about it.
Now with AI, who can publish, bullshit on such a scale and disseminate it on even bigger scale, what journalism can be, I'm not sure.
Journals and journalism itself is born together with capitalism. But something has been changing.
I am tired, frustrated, and I had a panic attack and I don't know how I will pay for my psychiatrist.
We are cracking like popcorns, that we are not attracting new talent because we don't have anything to attract them with.
Hello and welcome to our talk show Standard Time, where we discuss European matters and why Europe matters. I'm your host, Reka Kingopap. And on Display Europe, you can watch this same show with subtitles in 15 languages or listen to it in a podcast format. Now, let's be honest, journalism is a weird profession. Ever since the introduction of the printing press, one thing has been constant in the publishing field, and that's rapid change. It's especially so in this post-truth era, and don't even get me started on what social media is doing to the media sphere. When I first started working as a journalist in 2008, great timing, I know, just at the peak of a financial crisis, I remember there was a picture in the office of a man struggling with a desktop computer, a landline phone, a TV-sized camera, and a radio microphone set on top of him. It was a bitter joke about changing expectations, and frankly, it wasn't too wrong. We are expected to do everything and more, and preferably for less and less. You have to be super savvy at writing, filming, and editing, find your way around all sorts of publishing infrastructure, and deliver everything super fast. Because the news never stops and never sleeps, and there is always something happening. Also, you have to find the funding for your own work, because money has all but disappeared from quality publishing since the Great Depression of 2008. I have had more than one nervous breakdown during my journalistic career, but I have never stopped writing and talking about things that are important to me. I'm a middle child. I'm genetically coded to never shut up. But what about the young journalists embarking on this professional mission today? What do young professionals face? What kind of structures do they have to navigate? And what do they wish for? To discuss all this and more, we headed to the Polish capital, Warsaw. Also to eat a lot of pierogi, of course. We had a really powerful panel discussion about bullshit journalism, where we talked about representation, anxiety attacks, and how journalism has changed. This time, I'm not hosting this panel. I know, outrageous, right? This is hosted by returning champion Luca Gabrielcic, who is also an editorial board member of Eurozines, and I promise you, the guests and the discussion are very much worth it. Paulina Januszewska is a journalist of the Polish online portal Krytyka Polityczna and recently published her book Bullshit Journalism on the early career path experiences of young journalists. Her book is the inspiration for this episode. Paula Cardoso is a journalist, activist, and a founder of Afrolink Lisbon. Ivana Dragicevic, Moja Dragica, is our recurring guest. She's a journalist and has long been the executive producer of international news at N1 TV in Zagreb. Now she's an independent journalist and one of my favorite people. And as I have mentioned, the discussion is moderated by also another recurring face on the show, Raspotia editor and Eurozines editorial board member Luca Gabrielcic. They're talking at Warsaw's Palace Finansowo, that is the Palace of Finance. Quite on point.
Notion of bullshit journalism is a very broad notion, and actually I would start by asking each of you how do you define it. But I think it's a convergence at least of two very similar yet still different trends. One is something that we have discussed a lot in the last 2 days about clickbait journalism, the pressure that many media outlets feel by following and running behind a news cycle. But it's also a reference, of course, to David Graeber's notion of bullshit jobs. How would you actually define bullshit journalism? And is it actually a meaningful term?
I am using this word like to describe journalistic work which is ruled by precarious exploitation or self-exploitation. Graeber's sense of meaninglessness and also political or commercial pressure. And capricious algorithmic logic and mobbings.
I would start with bullshit capitalism instead of bullshit journalism. When we don't have conditions to do our work, we don't have time to reflect on the subjects defining our society, or that are more important, more relevant. When we have, as Paulina said, to produce content. It's about quantity and not about quality. It's really hard to be a journalist. These business models that we have and how we are so conditioned to just acting like just going after the social media, because I think that the main problem is that when you are being pressured all the time to produce, to forget what it takes to produce an article, a journalistic article, when you are only obeying to this frenetic velocity of social media, you are not being a journalist. We have this capitalistic system, this capitalism that it's preventing us from doing our jobs. We started with these fact-checking projects, and I think that we only need these fact-checking projects because journalism, unfortunately, doesn't have the room to do what it was created to. We are missing the point, I think, and of course I think that we still have the power as journalists to say no. I resigned my previous position as well because I was feeling that I was not being able to do what it's important to do in this system. And I would love to see a journalism that helps us to understand what is happening instead of fueling this polarization system. You are receiving the news and you don't have the time to think about it. You have a lot of people that are right after saying how you should think. When I studied journalism, I had this code of ethics, and I don't know if anyone is respecting this code of ethics.
First, not everything that is published, be it in traditional media, be it on social media, is journalism. And I think this is what you just said, the most important maybe thing we need to reflect in completely changed circumstances. Newsrooms completely changed. These promises of, yeah, you publish thousands of bullshit things per day and one day you will be, I don't know, awarded reporter. But now with AI, who can publish, bullshit on such a scale and disseminate it on even bigger scale, what journalism can be, I'm not sure, but I'm always a dreamer, for these new, very unsecure times. For me, it's mind-boggling that more and more people I encounter really cannot distinguish real information, fake news, disinformation that are all around. Journalism needs to reclaim this ethics, because if this inflation of opinions is our future, so our societies will not be the societies as we knew before, and the whole things we're discussing are not relevant anymore.
Now, if you like what you see, and if we managed to make you laugh at least once, do join our Facebook group called Public Works, where we hold watch parties, discuss episodes, and all kinds of European matters. And we are genuinely interested in what you have to say about these topics. You get to suggest topics for future episodes as well. So see you there in the Public Works group.
But I would like us to take a step backward and to reflect on which of those problems are already maybe inherent to journalism itself, because after all, when we complain about capitalism, we still have to realize that basically journals and journalism itself is born together with capitalism. But something has been changing, right? All of you somehow hinted that there are deep structural changes. Maybe a way to think about it is I would like each of you to reflect, how did you start your career, and the possibilities that you had while starting your career, maybe in a more traditional setting, and how that experience that you had will not be replicable for new generations.
So I was an enthusiast of the worst kind. This is the term which was used by Polish journalist Aleksandra Boczkowska. I read a lot. I always contested the existing reality, and also wrote in school newspapers, student newspapers, and then I took up cultural journalism. My first serious job was in Polish Newsweek. This was commercial media, and of course I gained there a lot of experience, but I didn't have a mentor. This is the big problem, I think, in Polish media. I entered the job market at the time of the greatest, I would say, garbageification. The full-time jobs were replaced by contracts which are, unstable. I don't know the media in the golden era, like in television or
What was
magazines.
the golden era in Poland, for example?
Because I always work for the internet, and I don't know how to do this great journalism. I really hope that I will find another path of my career, because I am tired, frustrated, and I had a panic attack yesterday in my work, and I don't know how I will pay for my psychiatrist. So this is the problem. This is the big problem for a lot of young, and not only young people, people who are working in this profession for 20, 30 years. Maybe I would like to talk about how we can unionize, and I am very interested in how it looks like in other countries, like in Portugal or Croatia.
I always loved to write. I really have this relationship with writing, and at some point I had to decide what to do after studying international relations, and after I saw a black man presenting news on TV, which was something that was spectacular in Portugal back then. And I was so impressed by this possibility not to be on TV, because it was back then I thought that this was impossible for a black woman to present a TV show on the Portuguese TV because of racism and because there's no representation of black people. So that's why I'm saying that it was not a choice to begin with, being a journalist. It was a question of references. That's why I'm working so hard in this line of work, just to give more models to black children, to our youth, so that they can dream about being anything. I decided, okay, I love to write, I love justice, so maybe this is a match. After graduating in international relations, I just went to this school, a more practical approach. So I did this program for a year, and the program had also this training, 3 months training. So I started as a journalist through this training process. It was in a news magazine, Visão, which is a weekly news magazine in Portugal. I started there, and I started as a trainee. We had a lot of advertising back then, and Visão needed someone to do these special editions. and they just called me, and that's how I returned to Visão. I was there for 3 years without a contract. And after, they created a new newspaper, and as I was feeling that I couldn't do what I wanted to in Visão, I just applied for this new newspaper. And after being here in this newspaper, I had the opportunity to travel to Angola. So I worked in Angola as well. And after working in Angola, that's when I started thinking about creating my own projects. Now that I have these tools, of course, I want to put them, fight for the causes that I believe in. I think that the words matter, they have a huge power, and I want to use it to build a better system.
We are thinking that it has some missionary role in our society. So my first job after journalism school was at the first private TV station after the war in Croatia. So just finished journalism school. I was staying for 14 hours there. I was paid nothing or peanuts because I wanted to learn. And there was a mentor, older journalist, my editor at that time, who was great, and I thank him for, this basis in TV journalism, because I always wanted to write. Became TV journalist, worked as a TV journalist for 27 years. Now I'm back to writing because the toll of the life, not just profession, what Paulina said, brought me to the diagnosis of cancer. The distinction between job and mission, I completely agree that in today's time it's job because of the situation we're all in, that we are cracking like popcorns, that we are not attracting new talent because we don't have anything to attract them with. Today's influencers world is much more lucrative, because when I heard the other day that an influencer, 22-year-old, earns for a story on Instagram, which lasts for 24 hours, my 6-month paycheck. Paulina asked me about the situation in Croatia. For example, private televisions, none of them has, we founded now the trade union as the first one, but it's a long fight, and I do believe in solidarity, but I got disappointed so many times that I don't know if I can, still believe in this generational change that is coming. Looking at the thing you are dealing with, inequality in Europe, you had the youngest parts of Europe are urban centers of France and Belgium. The oldest parts of Europe is Eastern Germany. So you see how it spills over to politics, to everything that we're experiencing. We need to bring in kids that are not best pupils in the class. We need to have this communal journalism. We need to engage down there, but again the problem is how we are going to have our lunch on the table. So these are the things that we need to think about, because if we continue with this kind of shift into both economic model and model of producing and receiving information, then we're doomed.
Unions in Portugal are labeled as communists, so not everyone is joining. This is a problem. And about mentorship, now I am a mentor because I know the importance of having a mentor, because I didn't have one. So I know that it's something that makes a difference, just to have someone to share the problems, the anxieties, and you name it.
Your experience, as difficult as it was, nevertheless, how much is it applicable to the new generations? It's really a monumental change, because what is being produced, the classical discourse, the cliche, but also like most of the content, it's already reproducible by artificial intelligence. and how that changes, the whole attitude, the whole role of this job.
I'm part of this European Digital Media Observatory, which is pan-European project on fighting disinformation. And you see on our measurement scales how it is like rising every day, the penetration of AI into news and into basically spreading misinformation, AI-generated, be it videos, be it photos, be it texts.
This is the paradox that shit journalist, can be relieved from making a shitty articles, but what will happen next? They will not have a job at all, and this is the problem, because they will be fired, and of course as a part of optimization. So I think that the most important thing is that AI will affect journalists, of course, but it will affect the employers' rights.
Journalism doesn't have any more resources, human resources, to fill the umbrella of journalism, because really when I meet young people who are coming to studying journalism, when you ask them what interests you, what you want to be, influencers or PR people. We are not having people who want to be in this profession, so maybe it will just die off or re-articulate itself.
I have a partner that is working on the new template or new layout of Afrolink website, and he's training a bot. I think that's how we say it. But it's not to produce content, it's to suggest content. Some ideas when we are stuck, when we are being less creative. And I think that it can be helpful as a tool to do this. If you are doing your job, you need to have resources, you need to contact people, you need to interview them. So this, the artificial intelligence can do. It can digest the information that is already available. When it comes to fact-checking, you have to use it with moderation, with cautious, I think.
Libraries and community leaders across Europe apply now. The Europe Challenge 2025-26 empowers libraries to tackle social, digital, and climate challenges through cross-border collaboration. You can get up to 10,000 euros in funding, mentoring, workshops, and networking opportunities. Join more than 90 libraries already building a more inclusive, connected, and sustainable Europe. Apply by the 29th of May and let your library lead the change.
When we were talking about the crisis of journalism, hyperproduction of content, bullshit journalism, clickbait, every form of degradation, almost at every panel, and this one included, one of the topics of, let's say, kind of a very popular target was opinion journalism. I have been working in opinion journalism for more than 10 years, and I like it. I would like to reflect on the role of opinion journalism nowadays, because of course we all know the negative part. We all know the obnoxious commentator, the Tucker Carlson person who produces opinions that you should have, who is much more actually attuned to this new world of clickbait content. So don't you think that in this world in which discourse has become reproducible on an industrial level in the way that we have not seen before, and I'm again referring to artificial intelligence broadly speaking, that the art of cultivating a well-informed opinion, it's actually something worth preserving.
I use my opinion today or nowadays because I think that it's really important to present my perspective to Portuguese society in this case when it comes to racism, because we don't have black voices writing for journals, for newspapers, for magazines, and it's really important to share what we are reflecting on in terms of racism, in terms of the conditions of black people in Portugal.
Maybe it's already a good starting point to start the discussion, because I see many hands already.
Just an example from Bulgaria. Sensica, this is a system like a web archive of news media. And in Bulgaria, in the last 2 years, 2/3 of the online media and production coming from online media is just coming from machines.
We're all sitting here producing substantial quality journalism. Maybe it's not journalism, maybe it's the other journalism, not the corporate journalism, but the countercultural or the substantial journalism. I don't know what to call it, and I never even thought about it that way before this conference. That the mainstream journalism, or whatever is being described here, is so devoid of interest and inspiration and ideas. I didn't know it was that bad. But we are, our situation, what we do here on our level is something else completely.
I heard an example from Germany the other day. From the city of Stuttgart, there is a media academy. And this media academy is, so to say, both for design, text production, journalistic pieces. And Stuttgart is, so to say, not only the place where a lot of German publishing houses are located, but also where the German car industry is based, which means that they have their own magazines, they have big consulting companies, they all have media outlets by now, and they pay 4 times as much. So freedom or journalistic independence maybe is no longer the core issue for young journalists. So if you take on a bullshit job, then you at least take on a bullshit job which is well paid.
You feel that what you're doing will survive at the end. Maybe in our lifetime, maybe we will survive with it, but the generation after us, they will need to think of. And talking about this, I think that we come again in the discussion of what is public good, and if journalism is public good. And that all of our countries have something that is called public television, which is always first under attack, but which still penetrates every household in Europe. And it has huge power if it would be, I don't know, regulated, articulated, claimed by the public. The definition of what public good has changed. You know, culture wars, or you call it how you want. You know, this is the problem. The words change the meaning, or the meaning changed within the concepts. And this is our common, I think, fight in Europe with, of course, working conditions.
In Portugal, for instance, we have here Gerador. Gerador is also a project that just that was created as Afrolink, because we don't see ourselves reflected in the system, and we want to propose a different way of doing things. And we have a lot of projects in Portugal that, of course, are pursuing something different. In Portugal, this week, our government just announced the new plan for media, and one of the measures that we have there is that they are going to remove the money they are giving to our public channel. The channel is going to be privatized at some point, because that's what they do. They turn everything into business. And this is something that the young generation, at least from where I'm saying, they are trying to contest.
We have to demand from the politicians taxes from Meta, X, and other companies, because this money could be used for journalism. So we have a lot of projects of changing the law, but they are not effective.
Yeah, what surprises me here in this panel, dedicated to the theme of young journalists, So I guess younger generations, is this extremely negative sentiment towards social media? And also yesterday I've heard one also extremely negative comment on, and I'm definitely not a social media enthusiast or whatever. I generally dislike them a lot, but I think, to only speak of social media in terms of influencers trying to sell us something, kind of simplifies things, or maybe even banalizes them, because not everything is bullshit there. I mean, Wizard Bisson got an Emmy recently.
Like Luca, if you say the art of making a well-formed opinion is something we should cherish and also hand over to the younger generations, then I presume that this opinion is something that AI can't make. Of course, AI can churn out opinion after opinion, but it's not the opinion that we're waiting for. And Paula, I really love what you said, that you're kind of breaking open a whole new kind of debate in Portugal, just pointing towards a problem of black representation, basically. This is, I think, a really beautiful example of an opinion that could never come out of AI because it doesn't exist yet. The concept of selling out, which was like the most devastating comment you could get, in the 90s or 80s, and now to sell out is a compliment. So if you're able to sell out your position on Instagram as an influencer, you're doing what everyone wants, because you're getting the 6-month salary for selling out. We have to have the discussion about the social media connection to the news cycle and the churning and the burning out and the panic attacks. And if we don't all manage to get away from, let's face it, US-based bullshit media, which includes also ChatGPT, then, I mean, we are fucked. So is there a way that in Europe we can also think of a different social media system that helps us? And do you see any hopes there?
I think that as long as I feel that I can outsmart artificial intelligence, I still think that I have a role in this niche. And for sure, there are many opinions in which artificial intelligence can know already what I will write. You said something very, very important here, that artificial intelligence cannot predict novelty. Because what artificial intelligence definitely does not have, it's responsibility and accountability. And I think this aspect is something that we absolutely still can provide.
Social media that is owned by the richest person in the world, who claims that hate speech is freedom of the speech, is not social media. It's a business model, very dangerous business model. To voluntarily be on this, to support this business model is, I think, in terms of what is happening with our civilization, wrong from my perspective. But I am a social media influencer. You can follow me on Instagram, watch my stories, and you can watch my series on YouTube. Thank you.
The problem is not the existence, in my opinion, of social media. The problem is when journalism is forgetting its role, its mission, to just try to follow the trends that are on social media, and this is a problem.
Just surprised me how, generally negative we are towards it. I mean, we can at least discuss it,
Okay, I'm actually not an optimist person, but as a pessimist, I tried a lot, but I can't see the end of journalism. I mean, after the party, someone has to clean up, this way or that way. So I'm sure journalism will go on. And I still believe that in younger generations also, there are curious and smart guys will continue this.
A lot of people are doing an amazing job. informing the audiences, the population.
What Ivana was saying, that journalists, very skillful, didn't know what's West Bank and where is the Middle East.
Student.
And exactly, the education is totally crucial. And I mentioned yesterday that I published a whole issue on crisis of university education in Europe, not in Slovakia, not in Central Europe, in post-communist countries, but in general, because the bachelor students, those 18-year-old coming from high school, they are forced to narrow their choice to a very narrow discipline. And hence, they are not able to distinguish the bullshit and the solid media. And I can tell you, and I run a liberal arts college, almost every of our graduates could become a journalist in a couple of months because they know how to write, they know how to speak, they can do their research, they write every week at 3 or 4 classes, so they have that skill.
We talked a lot about, sort of put it like in economical terms, in the production issue. But everybody who knows the history of journalism knows that it is not that when journalism was born at late 18th century in England, a bit earlier, in our countries a little bit later, that it answered necessarily a demand from society. Many historians of media say a different story, that it was the first journalists were creating their own public. They were nurturing new sensibilities and new types of sociabilities, which were sometimes completely absent before. We identified a need before the public articulated it. We said, you need that. And there was a response when, after a while, they said, yeah, actually we need. You sensibilize your own public, and then you receive their feedback. And then you create a sort of a feedback loop, which is a positive feedback loop, which cannot maybe save the world, but can make it better, more reflexive, etc. So on this semi-positive note, this is the most optimistic I can be. I think we can wrap up this panel, and thank you very much for my panelists for the amazing discussion.
Now we want to know, would you choose to become a journalist now? What would be your expectations? Does somebody pay your rent? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're already rummaging down there, give us a like and subscribe to the channel. This talk show is presented by Eurozine, and if you haven't heard of it, you should check it out right now. Display Europe is the force behind this project. It's a content sharing platform that offers you articles, podcasts, and videos about European politics and culture in 15 different languages from dozens of outlets. And yes, they don't even abuse your user data. I know it's unbelievable. Go check it out at displayeurope.eu. This program is co-funded by the Creative Europe program of the European Union and the European Cultural Foundation. Importantly, the views and opinions expressed here are those of the speakers and the authors only, and they do not necessarily reflect those of the European Union or the European Education and Culture Executive Agency. Neither the European Union nor the EACA can be held responsible for them. Not that we would mind if they considered what's said here.